Excellent. Welcome everyone to this edX session on day 1, stream 3.2. It's fantastic to have you all in this session. And before we move on, I just want to remind everyone that this session is being recorded. I also request you to please turn your microphones off. And you're very welcome to switch them on when we get to the question and answer component of this session as well. But please feel free to use the chat function and the QA function to post your question. Before we move on to the presentations in this session, I just want to do a quickly acknowledgement of country. So I pay my respects to First Nations elders, past, present, and emerging across many lands where Charles State University campuses, students and staff are located. In particular, I acknowledge the Wiradjuri, Nanganwal, Gundungara, and Biripai peoples. I also pay my respects to any First Nations colleagues in this session today. Just as a reminder, we have 3 presentations in today's session. Due to some unforeseen reasons, we have Philip Edwards had to withdraw from the session today. So I want to welcome our first presenter, Mark Frost, and that presentation is titled Rethinking Teaching and Student Engagement with Regional Chinese Students Post-COVID. And I'll hand over to Mark and his team. Thanks. You can now share your screen.
Thank you, Emmett. So I'll just do the start and we'll move across the team. So I'm Catherine Herbert. I am presenting with Mark Frost and Emmett Berry. I'm very privileged to introduce Mark and Emmett's work and give you the backdrop of this presentation. Mark and Emmett's passion brings to the fore their teaching practice that engages with a very different way students in China engage with their learning. Mark and Emmett are what we refer to the School of Business as our JCP veterans. What is JCP? It's the Joint Cooperative Partnership Program. It's been running across CSU and our 4 China university partners for the last 20 years. In the last 18 months, we've increased our CSU delivered subjects from 8 subjects to 16. Just noting here that Kunming, Changchun, Yangzhou University specifically are considered Tier 1, Tier 2, and Tier 3 institutions, respectively, which means 50% of their students reside about 2 hours from their campuses. And then this slide just showing you a context of the impact of the industries in their specific regions, manufacturing and innovation in Tianjin, copper, chemicals, and manufacturing in Kunming, car manufacturing and the film industry in Changchun, and last but not least, agricultural industries in Yangzhou. Over to you, Emmett.
Thank you, Kath. So just going to the next slide. So prior to COVID, the teaching was provided in a combination of CSU staff and local lecturer staff teaching face-to-face, with some materials also provided through our CSU learning management system. And however, in response to COVID, our teaching to some almost 1,000 students across all 4 partners was conducted online via Zoom and supported by enhanced online materials through the learning management system. In-country teaching recommenced in September last year, where we adopted a hybrid model that optimizes the most effective face-to-face and online characteristics. And in response to this, the engagement and progress rates have varied across the 4 partners and subject offerings. So we, as academics, we've been involved in the China teaching program over this period, including teaching and the development of materials. And another thing just to note while looking at this slide, it is kind of a paradox in a way that China is quite technologically advanced. However, the classrooms still contain the standard chalkboards and traditional learning format, like with a lecture, then a tutorial. So the aim of this presentation is to examine the student engagement and subsequent progress rates and to identify what worked well, what didn't, and what amendments could be made in the future to enhance performance. And additional aims as part of our continuous improvement strategy is, although the delivery structure in the course is different, we're aiming to enhance the to ensure rather that the Chinese students have the same opportunities and resources as they would if they were studying on campus in Australia at one of our CSU campuses. And we aim to provide students with additional guidance and ensure they're aware of CSU expectations. And even though they're coming from a different educational system prior to conducting their degree with us. For example, we're encouraging students to ask questions. It's not just a lecture format, and also providing additional CSU library resources, academic skills resources, and how to use the CSU library database, how to approach using APA 7 format, and the Peel approach of point evidence analysis and linking writing paragraphs. So the methods of data that we reviewed was the learning management system, and now Brightspace, which we teach the students through, Turnitin reports, progress rates, grade distributions, individual assessment results. And for this particular study, we focused on the final 8 subjects that are taught in the 3rd year. And this has covered the period of 2020 to 2023 when we taught back in country. And we'll go through each of those results on the following slides, but they do show that the results varied by partner and by subject and by session. Also, subjects saw post-COVID dip in results following a return to face-to-face written exams. And furthermore, lower performing subjects were not consistent across all partners and sessions. So results saw for management or business or finance subjects with one partner may not be replicated across all the partners. So I'll go through the first 4, and then I'll hand over to Mark for the final 4. So international accounting issues is a subject that I teach, and there was a large increase in the fail rate initially. That's sort of fixed up this year, and a general decline across the grades, and that suggested there was some decline in all assessments as well as an initial fail of the exam, but it has progressed when they had their additional exam makeup. And then global business project management, the grade distribution was steady across the 3 years, although there has been an increase in the percentage of credits and distinctions across 2023. Moving on to the finance subjects I'm also involved in, there was a large increase in the fail rate and a general decline lower across the grades going through the years here. That's with banking and finance, but with international, the trade and business finance, it was rather steady across the 3 years. So I'll hand over now to you, Mark, to keep discussing the subjects.
Okay, thanks, Emmett. And the reason I'm doing these last 4 subjects is because I'm sort of more on the management side of things, and I actually teach one of the management subjects. I should also point out that we're talking about the final 8 subjects, which is where we've got data from, because we've only recently started teaching what we call the middle 8 direct. And when we talk about teaching, sorry, just for a bit of context, effectively a China session is only 8 weeks long, and in that 8 weeks the students study 2 CSU subjects, as well as teaching as well as being taught other subjects from their home degree, because it's sort of like a double degree arrangement with our Bachelor of Business Studies. And in those 8 weeks, we actually go and teach, the students will be taught 2 weeks intensively for subject A, and then another 2 weeks intensively for subject B. So for 4 of those 8 weeks, they have classes from ourselves. And then in the other 4 weeks, they have classes from local lecturers. So look, Emmett, I'll get you to go to the next slide. So a common feature across these 4 subjects, as well as the previous 4, is with the re-implementation of written exams, there's been a general drift to the right or to the left, I suppose, if you want to put it, where, you know, when it was online exams, the students were performing a lot better, whereas now that for academic integrity purposes, we've re-implemented paper-based 3-hour handwritten exams, the students are sort of struggling connecting with that. And also, if a student fails the exam, they do actually get, under the Ministry of Education, an automatic resit. So effectively, we have a very big additional examination process as well. So, Emmett, I'll get you to go to the next slide. Thanks. So look, where we're coming from, I suppose, now that we've got some continuity in the teaching space with permanent academic staff teaching, we're sort of finding that as our experience and understanding of the 4 partners and the students improve, we're sort of trying to become more nuanced in our teaching. One example of that is, you know, perhaps having more examples related to the local regional context, you know, given the different industries. We're also, we're now engaging the students more with group presentations and as an assessment to sort of try and build up their speaking skills and their presentation skills. Because unlike Australian students, the Chinese students are probably what our students were 30 years ago, or, you know, when I went through university, even 40 years ago, where straight out of home, straight to university. So basically all but a handful actually have jobs. So, you know, the ability to build up, you know, the ability to leverage their knowledge from, you know, their retail jobs or their, you know, fast food jobs is very limited. Like, it's easy to teach motivation in, you know, to an Australian student because, you know, they will have experienced, you know, a manager in a part-time job that they have, but it's a lot more difficult for students. So look, moving forward, I suppose what we're trying to do is to try and become a little bit more nuanced in our teaching. I suppose the part of the issue is that we're trying to become more nuanced, but also trying to manage the fact that we're there for a short period of time. There's time pressures, the class sizes are quite large, the ability to access technology and internet, etc., is restricted in China. So trying to how to leverage that hybrid relationship with the online material as well as the face-to-face engagement is proving challenging, but I think as each year and each session progresses, we are getting better and better and more astute at it. Look, I suppose I'm a little bit conscious of time, so I might leave it there as sort of an information download, but I'm hoping we can sort of tease out discussions when the other presenters have presented. So I might leave it there, Amita, if that's okay.
Thanks, Mark and team, for that very interesting presentation. Interesting to see, you know, the overlaps and unique nature of the Chinese cohort as compared to some of the cohorts that we see at Charleston. So thank you very much. And we'll just come back to this in the Q&A time. So just keeping up with time, let's move on to the next presentation. So I invite Rebecca Fabry and her team with their presentation on Partnership in Action and Open Educational Resource Anthology for Regional Social Work Practices.
Thanks.
Welcome, Rebecca. Please
Thank
share
you,
your...
Amita. Yeah.
Yeah.
I can
Share
go
your
ahead and
screen.
share.
Yeah. If there is problem, let me know so that I can share.
Okay, so hopefully you'll be seeing my screen okay now. The
Yep.
PowerPoint? Yeah, great. Thank you. Okay, hi everybody. My name is Beck Fabry and I am Manager Academic Services with the library. And I'm joined by my library colleagues, Lauren Bromby, Manager Academic Services, and our Copyright and Open Content Librarian, Jane Boland, as well as the academic lead on this project, Dr. Monica Short from the School of Social Work. Today, we're really excited to present our project, Partnership in Action, an open educational resource anthology for regional social work practices. This project highlights the potential of open educational resources, or OER, which are freely available, adaptable teaching and learning materials. At Chau, we recognise the critical role OER can play, especially for our regional students who often face challenges in accessing scholarly materials. So this anthology is the result of a collaborative effort involving social work students, School of Social Work academic staff led by Dr. Monica Short, community members from Rotary Morisset and YWCA Canberra and Chau Library, creating an anthology of group work activities to support both students and industry. And we're really happy to share that this anthology, titled Group Work Anthology, was officially published just last week. So let's start out by having a look at the aims of the project. So firstly, we aim to empower students by allowing them to develop resources that have practical applications beyond the classroom. Secondly, we wanted to improve accessibility by creating an open resource that would be freely available for future student cohorts and also available for regional practitioners to use and adapt in their workplace. And finally, we sought to bring together students, academic staff, library services, and community partners, fostering collaboration throughout the process. In this presentation, we'll take you through the stages of the project, from ideation and collaboration right through to publication, and highlight the impact and potential of OER in our community.
For context, thanks, Beck. For context, this project used an OER-enabled pedagogical approach, which revolved around the 5 key permissions of open educational resources known as the 5 Rs: retain, reuse, revise, remix, and redistribute. These principles support a flexible, dynamic, student-centered learning environment where students become creators and collaborators in developing renewable assessments that have value beyond the subject. During an intensive school, social work students designed group work activities tailored to real-world applications, many drawing from their own industry experience. Publishing this anthology as an OER ensures their work has a lasting impact, providing a practical resource for social work practitioners and the community. This approach not only enhances the learning experience, but also highlights the importance of student contributions in creating useful educational materials. Next slide, please, Beck. Now, the steps we took to bring this project to life. It all started when Dr. Monica Short and the students saw potential for these group work activities to be relevant to a wider audience beyond the classroom and contacted the library OER team to discuss possibilities. This process was highly collaborative. Students, academic staff, library team members, and community partners all played important roles. Each group contributed different types of content and offered unique insights and expertise at every stage of the process. Students and community partners provided real-world scenarios, while academic staff authored content and gave peer feedback. To ensure quality, the OER underwent a double-blind peer review by 2 subject matter experts from community organisations, and their recommendations were incorporated in the final version. The library team, in consultation with Monica, then formatted the content for the Pressbooks platform, which provides an accessible online publishing format, and developed the overall look and feel. To apply a Creative Commons license to the work, we had to consider who owned the copyright, ensure all the authors understood the CC license options and were comfortable with their choice of license. Creative Commons licenses are permissions given by copyright owners. The university owns the intellectual property of resources created by staff. However, students own their own intellectual property. The staff contributions included in the book, the layout and format are copyright to Chau University. The student contributions are copyright to the author. The contributors met with the library's copyright and open content librarian to discuss the pros and cons of the license options, which resulted in a unanimous decision to apply a CC by NC license, allowing others to freely use and adapt this work for non-commercial purposes with attribution to the creator. And this aligns with the values of OER. Thanks, Beck.
Thanks, Lauren. So one question we often get asked about this project is how much of the content was student created versus staff created and supported. So let's just break that down a little bit. So firstly, for context, a little bit about the content of the anthology. So the anthology includes background information about group work and a variety of activities, such as communication exercises, ethical scenarios, and team building activities. Each activity is designed to be adaptable, with notes on how practitioners can tailor them for different clients or settings. So a quick breakdown of those contributions. Students authored many of the activities, focusing on real-world social work scenarios. Their contributions ensure the anthology is practical and directly applicable to their current and future workplaces. So staff and community contributions, they included Dr. Monica Short and colleagues from the School of Social Work, along with community professionals who authored content on group work theory and case studies, providing essential context for the student-developed activities. They also refined the entire anthology to meet professional standards, while library staff supported the development of this OER by guiding the process, assisting with licensing, and formatting the content for the Pressbooks platform. So it's a project that was truly collaborative, with each contributor adding unique value. So the impact of this project reaches beyond the students who created it. So here are some of the key benefits that we've identified so far. So for students, this project offered authentic assessment opportunities. It allowed them to contribute to a published resource, a significant resume addition as they enter the workforce. Future students will now have free access to the content, and given the permissions of OER, wouldn't it be great to see those future cohorts build on this resource? And for regional practitioners, they now have free access to a high-quality resource they can immediately integrate into their practices. While for the community, this project helps connect our university with the wider community, promoting knowledge sharing and strengthening social work practices in our region. And now I'd like to invite Monica to talk a little bit more about the impact of this project and the published OER. Thanks, Monica.
So a huge thank you to the people studying for initiating the project. A massive thank you to the people in library services, particularly Beck, Lauren and Jane, who got behind this project and really supported the people studying to engage. And also to our school. So we were running a pilot satellite project in Canberra, supported by Trish Mackey and other colleagues from our school, and that we're actually going to present on that tomorrow if you want to come and hear more about what we did. But the impact has been quite profound. Already we're getting feedback. We've embedded a survey into the book, and already we've started, considering it's only been out for a couple of days, we're already starting to get beginning of numbers to fill in that survey. And they're indicating that they are using the book to inform their practice within the workplace, to also change their attitudes towards how they're running group work, and to also thinking about how can they use it within such things as policy documents about group work. So the benefits are already paying off, and it has just been the most delightful project to be involved in. So thank you so much to the wonderful librarians, and also to the people studying, and to the School of Social Work and Arts.
Thanks so much, Monica. So in conclusion, we found embracing OER-enabled pedagogy as transformative. It's offering accessible, adaptable resources and fostering community connections. Of course, this didn't come without challenges, including the need for dedicated collaboration time to align students, staff, and library resources, as well as the effort required to ensure a quality publication through peer review and iterative feedback. Despite these challenges, this OER anthology highlights how open resources enhance student learning and benefit the community and industry. And so this aligns with CharSTED's commitment to providing accessible, relevant resources for regional students, both now and in their future careers. And as a call to action, we'd like to end by inviting you all to explore how OER can enhance your teaching, engage students, and create lasting, meaningful impacts. Thanks so much for your time today.
Thank you so much, Rebecca and the team. That was a fantastic presentation. And actually to see such a collaborative effort and, you know, another example of students as partners, but also staying on with the provocation theme. So thank you so much for that call to action. That's brilliant. I'm sure you're going to get a lot of questions at the end. So we'll just leave it at that. And now the final presenter for our session, Shayne Chau. I'll invite you to join us for the presentation From Theory to Practice, Gamification in Medical Radiation Science Education. Sounds very interesting already. Over to you, Shayne.
Great. Hi, everyone. Thank you for having me today. So I'm here today to present one of my favorite teaching tools kit, which is on gamification. So what is gamification? It is a process of applying game design elements and principles to non-game contexts to essentially engage and motivate people. And gamification is not a new trend. It's not a new terminology. It's been around since the early 2000s and gaining traction as industry recognized its potential to transform experiences in marketing, education, and health. And by embedding elements like point systems, leaderboards, challenges, gamification taps into the very intrinsic human motivations, such as achievement, competition, and social interaction. So in higher education, gamification has shown great promise in enhancing engagement and retention by making learning more interactive and enjoyable. So whether turning assessment into quests or lectures into interactive challenges, gamification reimagines the learning process in creative and effective ways. And gamification has evolved from traditional play-based learning into more of a structured digital educational method. And in medical radiation science education, it is becoming increasingly valuable. And gamification has three dimensions of its impact. So the first one is active learning, where it engages students in practicing and applying knowledge, enhancing deep learning. Second one being psychological impact, where it links positive emotion to learning, fostering problem solving and decision making. And lastly, there is an element of social interaction as well, where it promotes collaboration, teamwork, building that sense of community for the students. So essentially, this study follows a two-step approach, a narrative review followed by an autoethnography. The first part is the narrative review, which aimed to examine the development and impact of gamification within medical radiation science education. And the review includes student and lecturer experiences in gamified environments and highlights emerging trends that align with medical radiation science educational goals. The next step was the autoethnography approach, which is essentially a research method that combines an autobiography and ethnography to analyze personal experiences and connect them with wider cultural, political, and social meanings. So essentially in this study, it provided me with a way to evaluate gamification's impact through my own experience as an educator. And this approach was also approved by the Chau State Human Research Ethics Committee as well. So where are we now with gamification? There are several of gamification approaches or techniques or methods that have been used specifically in allied health and medicine. So for example, in allied health education, PC or computer specific games are increasingly popular and useful. So you now have surgical simulation games that help students practice their technical skills like sutures, for example. There are games that help students with communication with patients, which is a critical component to healthcare. In medical radiation science, more specifically, the literature points to certain gamification methods that have been particularly useful. So these include educational escape rooms, which promote teamwork and problem solving, fiction-based gamification, which incorporates themes like pop culture TV shows for greater engagement, Jeopardy-style quizzes that make review sessions very interactive, and obviously you also have auto-response system that allow real-time feedback and engagement from the students. So educational escape rooms or ERs. So these are very interactive team-based activities where students solve puzzles within a storyline to reinforce lesson content. So platform like Breakout EDU is very popular at the moment. It makes escape room a more digital environment It's very popular in higher education. There's been tons of literature on this already. So essentially, it involves 4 stages or 4 rooms. So you get the pre-game room where you introduce the storyline. You got the main game room where students solve puzzles and apply the subject concepts. And afterwards, once the student have solved the puzzle, students gather together in a debriefing room to reflect on their learning and then receive feedback. So this structure format encourages collaboration, problem solving, and a hands-on connection with theoretical knowledge. Fiction-based gamification, it uses themes and storyline from pop culture to create engaging and relatable learning experiences. You may have seen a few papers out there already that talk about the TV show called Game of Thrones as a gamification method. So essentially by embedding elements from the show, educator can provide a thematic and recognizable context, which enhances student engagement and make learning more memorable. So for instance, Game of Thrones allow lecturers to create scenarios that mirror the show's dynamic. So you have character alliances and rivalries that can be translated into team-based challenges, and fostering both collaboration and healthy competition among students. So you have imageries and complex storylines from the show itself can help the students connect with the subject content a bit more or more vividly. With radiography, for example, it can be framed within the scenarios inspired by the show where students can diagnose cases in a race against that opposing team. And this approach isn't new. It's not just limited to Game of Thrones. Other pop culture themes like Harry Potter and Hunger Games can be similarly effective. Jeopardy. Let's go back. So Jeopardy is an American TV show. It's becoming increasingly popular over the last decade as a gamification technique. This is one of my favorite as well. It's fun, it's interactive. There are several web-based Jeopardy games that you can sign up for. So Jeopardy Lab is one here. It's free. In medical radiation science, I've used a platform called Factile to create custom Jeopardy style games specifically tailored to topics like radiographic image interpretation. This works amazingly well for me, particularly in a revision session. And this approach not only makes reviewing material more engaging, but also helps students retain information more effectively. And the flexibility of Factiles also allows the question to be then reused as flashcards or memory games, giving students an additional way to study. So here's an example. So this is a workshop that I ran with 40 students in my class. It broke into a group of 5 students, and we'll have 8 groups here. As you can see, it's got watermelon, cherry, and shark. Each team takes turn to choose questions from categories like shoulder, elbow, bonuses, wrist, knee, ankle, and foot. And before starting, I show a brief video to introduce the rules, and the student then log into Factile, where they can use the buzzer feature as well. And as each team answers, we display correct response on the board, provide immediate feedback, and helping students reinforce learning on the spot. And the team with the most points at the end wins, usually chocolate, adding a more competitive element that students find highly motivating. And in this particular case, you can see that Watermelon picked a knee X-ray for $200, and here's the case of a knee X-ray that they need to give an interpretation to. Lastly, we all know about audience response system, and there are at least 20 different apps out there that we can use for this. At Chau here, we do have subscription to Mentimeter. My go-to has been Kahoot or WooClap. It just looks nicer for me. These platforms add an interactive and game-based element to learning, allowing students to participate from any device with internet access, whether in person or remotely. During COVID, this was a lifesaver. Using Mentimeter, for example, lecturers can create quizzes with multiple choice, truths and false, or open-ended questions, and faster the correct answers earn more points, with scores updated on the live leaderboard as well after each question. So again, this competitive element keeps students motivated and engaged throughout the session. So here's an example. So in a recent session this year, students were asked to define what SSDE is in a computer tomography context. So this is our 3rd year subject. They submitted answers through their devices, and their correct response will display once the time elapsed. And what's quite handy about Mentimeter is that after the session, it automatically generates a report for you, allowing you to track the student performance and also identify areas needing improvement. So beyond the cognitive benefits, gamification supports emotional and social learning. So students report from the literature and from my experience, reduce stress and anxiety as gamified activities often create a more relaxed and enjoyable learning environment compared to a traditional method. Furthermore, with team-based games like educational escape room or Jeopardy games, encourage collaboration, communication, helping students develop interpersonal skills, which is very important for interdisciplinary practice. And while the advantages of gamification is quite obvious and quite clear, there are some challenges that we need to consider as well. So one primary challenge is to align gamified activities with specific learning objective. And it's very important to ensure that the game elements that you use are directly tied with the learning outcomes and do not distract from the core content itself. And another challenge is the need for robust evaluation tools to measure the impact of gamification on student learning. And that is my presentation. I hope you found it's useful and got some techniques and methods to bring back to your classroom. Thank you.
Thanks, Shayne. That was very interesting. And everyone, please join me in thanking all our presenters and, sharing some of their work and inspiring us to do some more interesting work as we move forward. So I'll now open the session for questions. I can see there are a couple already there in the chat. So I'll invite the attendees to come off mute and ask your question, or if you want, I'm happy to ask as well. So who wants to go? And you can use the raise your hand function from the reactions there. Okay. Maybe I'll read.
I have a quick question that I popped into the chat. It's for Shayne. I use lots of games in my classes as well, and for the most part, students love them, and I do agree. I think what you're doing is fantastic, and aligning it with learning outcomes and all of that. But I do get a really interesting couple of comments in my SUES that students stopped coming to class because they found that their games started making them feel really anxious and they didn't like competing. So I would just wondered if you've had that experience and what you do to sort of navigate that sort of, and it was a shame that I only heard about it in the SUES. It would have been better, during the session.
Yeah, no, interesting points. I haven't come across this before, but I mentioned that overdoing it can be an issue as well. I think with Mentimeter, for example, you can take the feature of having the leaderboard, the live leaderboard or scoreboard out to remove that competition out of it. And it's more just going to be purely based on understanding whether the students actually understand the concept. So essentially asking the question, open-ended question, for example, student do their answers without actually adding any scores to it. So it then just become more of a revision session of some sort without the competitive element of it. I guess another point would be for Jeopardy game, for example, usually each group, there's always one student that really like that competitive element. So that student's usually the leader of the group and go hard with the buzzer. And the students that don't necessarily love the competitive elements of it can just be the participant of that group contributing to the answers, I suppose. But yeah, no, that's a very interesting point. I need to look further into that.
Oh, thanks, Shayne.
Thanks. Thanks, Louise. We have Trish.
Yes, hi. Look, great presentations. Congratulations, everyone. Just a question whether there's any legal issues, copyright issues using those, platforms and Game of Thrones, for example, and whether you've got to jump through approvals for that.
Again, another good question. I haven't come across any issues reported in the literature before. I guess it's the same as yeah. I think that the style of the game being escape room or fiction-based learning or gamification, you do have to use some sort of pop culture theme that might be relevant to the students. And I guess as long as you acknowledge where the elements come from, being Game of Thrones in this case, I may need to check, but I don't personally see any issues with that.
Actually, there was another comment in the chat around the same thing to do with copyright issues. So yeah, probably that's something we can investigate. Michael.
Yeah, all interesting presentations. I had one for the China guy, so Emmett and Mark. So certainly the return of face-to-face exams in person change grades. That was something you call out. What do you feel are the pros and cons, I guess, with doing that exams, that sort of format?
Look, I think the pro, it helps with academic integrity, because, they're invigilated exams, the papers are sent back to Australia to mark. I know it sounds a bit old-fashioned, but yeah. The con is, I don't know if I could write for 3 hours in an exam. I remember I remember when I used to, was doing my undergraduate at Armidale, and I used to handwrite everything. And even at the end of 3 hours, my own hand was sore and aching. So to ask an international student, English as the second language, to actually handwrite, where they actually use translation services, and like not in the exam, I mean, just generally as part of their study. And even in classes, that they've often got the appropriate app on, to actually then ask them to effectively go cold turkey to handwrite an exam is, I just sort of wonder whether, it's sort of asking them to sort of study uphill, if you know what I mean. So there are pros, but I think there's also some there are also some complexities as well that we need to take into account.
Would you go for an in-person, bring your own BY device and lock down the devices somehow or other? I mean,
but the interesting thing, and one of the things we have an issue with teaching is the students are actually very tech savvy. A lot of them have got padlets, a lot of them have got laptops, and they're clicking away in class. When I'm actually in the Chinese classroom, I don't actually have access to the internet. So basically everything's taught by thumb drive through a computer, right, with a chalkboard either side. So it's a bit of a paradox, if you know what I mean. So unfortunately we don't have access to, and even the local teachers, when they mark, so the local teachers mark a 30% report, and then we moderate that report. And the teachers mark that now online through Brightspace, which they absolutely love. And, using Turnitin has been a great improvement in the China teaching generally, and again, helping with academic integrity and informing the students. The teachers actually mark at home because they have limited access in their own staff rooms to IT. So I know it's a paradox, and unfortunately, the longer you spend in China, you come across these nuances. I hope you're smiling with me, Michael, and not at me when I am. Yeah.
But these aren't your choices. This is the situation we just teach into, right?
Yeah.
So thanks for your response, Mark. It is a interesting scenario, but I mean, as I think someone said before, like, it's a really important partnership that we've got going. So
yeah, look, it is, and look, I quite like, I really love my time up there because they're the students there are enthusiastic. They want to learn. It takes them a while to get. I think in the Chinese education system, it's still very formal. you know, so it takes them a while to, you know, to sort of get them to know that you can have a bit of fun in the classroom, you know, and, you know, have a bit of a joke and, you know, to sort of try and help with engagement. But we get there. Yeah.
Thanks, Mark. We have another question from Monica.
Sorry, Mark, I'm a little bit slow when it comes to technology. You said you use thumb drive. I didn't follow. How does that work?
Oh, so basically it's a USB stick. So I have all my presentations on a USB stick, basically take them into the classroom, plug it in and
face to face.
Face to face, yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
I was trying to
Yeah.
imagine this online and it wasn't.
Oh, no. So, yep. So sorry, I probably skipped over that a bit quickly. So we go over there. So when I'm teaching my international management subject, I'll be basically in partner A for 2 weeks, and in that 2 weeks, I'll do 26 hours of lectures and, you know, 4 groups of 6 hours of tutorials. So it's quite intensive. Yeah.
Thank you.
Koshila, sorry.
Thank you.
It's slow.
That's all right, Amita. Thank you, everyone. To the presenters and the teams, it was fantastic. I really learned a lot. But my question is to Monica and the library team, I think, and there's a comment in the chat as well. I'm really impressed with kind of how you brought a number of, it was a cross-disciplinary undertaking and students were involved. And I think that's really important as we think about students as partners in the various initiatives that we do. And I wondered whether you could kind of talk to us a little bit more about like how you went about that process, who was involved, how they got involved, what they did, you know, to kind of educate us on that really important kind of partnership element with our students.
Would you like me to take that question? Or
I was going to say yes, but I'd probably hand to Monica, as Monica did most of that coordination and encourage everyone to participate.
So alongside colleagues like Trish, I don't know if Trish is still here, we've been running intensives in face-to-face intensives in Canberra. And we just had this really beautiful group that came together to do group work intensive. And they just happened to be all experienced group work practitioners, except for one in this small group of students already. And so, you know how you turn up, and I brought all my tricks and, you know, had all my lectures and stuff. And Ingrid's in the room. Ingrid had helped me put together this most beautiful, how do you describe it, Ingrid? A kind of beautiful interactive that people can engage with about ethical practice and stuff. So I had all my tricks there, and one person put their hand up on the first day. It goes for a week, this intensive, 5 days, and just said, I'm an experienced group worker. I'm really nervous, Monica. I'm not going to sleep tonight if I don't get my group work done. Can I just do my group work presentation and have it all done with? And then a couple of others said, oh, me too. And so I pivoted and away they went. And all of a sudden we're running half a day to a day ahead on our program. And they're all really experienced practitioners. Every one of them was an experienced practitioner here in Canberra. So it was really about turning away from a kind of traditional pedagogical approach into a hudagogical approach where allowing the people in the classroom to actually lead the learning. And then I just kind of brought in the bits and made sure all the gaps were filled and that they were ready for the assessment task and none of the theory was missed. And then it was just a throwaway line. Someone said, I want to take this back to my workplace. And then I'm like, I'd heard through colleagues in Canada about open education resources, didn't know the language, didn't know anything about it, but I wanted to do it properly through copyright. reached out to the librarians. Next thing I know, the librarians are wrapping around the students and myself in the most beautiful way, really nurturing. I can just tell you, go for it. It is so much fun to do this. And it's a really nice way to publish scholarship of teaching and learning. And I'm a research geek. So I'm already always up for a bit of, innovative kind of thinking. And I love the whole participatory environment. Does that answer your question?
It really does. And Monica, I was just typing into the chat that I've been in a couple of presentations where our librarians have shared kind of the work they've been doing. So I think they weave their magic in amazing ways. So #librarians rule, I think, could be our hashtag for one of the themes that keep coming across around how, they really support, obviously, academics like yourself to kind of enact the visions and the ideas that you have. So fantastic. Thank you so much.
And I think we're really encouraged at CSU to be innovative in our teaching. Like, I've loved the other presentations. They were just so heartwarming to hear the innovations and to see so many of your beautiful faces. Like, you're all got so much passion for teaching, and seeing teaching go well. It's inspiring. We're fortunate.
Thank you so much, Koshila and Monica. But I am going to tag on to that question a little bit further from what Koshila asked to Monica. It's amazing to see that output as your open education resource and that the students are using it in their practice. I think that's like a shining example and absolutely for other academics to, look into as we move further. But looking at the future, do you see a take two, like for this particular resource, like second edition, for example?
Oh my gosh. I'm thanking God for everybody. Because all I can see now is, we could do this, or we could do that, or we could do this. We've got a research project happening right now, looking at the well-being of professionals in non-government organisations in rural Australia. We're already thinking, we could turn this into a press book. I'm sitting there thinking, I can put it into Introduction to Human Services. People will love it. Do you know what I mean? Like, there's so many ways that this could be used innovatively to, I see teaching and research as head and tails of the same coin. And so you're constantly bringing those skills interactively. And we've just got the best supports around us to be able to let us do it. I think my suggestion is for all of you to talk to the librarians, talk to people like Ingrid, and see what can be done.
Thank you. I think Kushila's got another question.
If no one else has questions, I do have one. I just want to shout out to Shayne, because Shayne, you just shared a really lovely example of qualitative research methodology in learning and teaching, and a really great example of, kind of scoping the literature via a narrative review and then autoethnography as kind of your preferred methodology. Now, for those of us in the social sciences, education, this is very familiar ground. We love qualitative work, but I wonder whether for our kind of basic science, maybe medical science, health sciences colleagues, who perhaps may be more quantitative or mixed methods oriented, could you maybe take us through what drew you to autoethnography? And you're from that space. You're probably not trained to be a qualitative researcher, maybe in your undergraduate training or postgraduate training, right? So, like, how did you kind of do that transition from sciences to this methodology?
I would say I'm a 95% quantitative person. I think that all came through the 12 weeks to publication program that we have here at Chau, and that was very helpful, the research program that we run here. And I was just sort of flagging an idea of, well, I have all of these case notes that I use, like my little reflections that I have from each of my teaching point every time I use gamification. And yes, I do have quantitative surveys and scores and things that students have provided through a separate ethics application. But it would be really nice to somehow put this into more of a research paper, and someone just flagged that, have you actually thought of an autoethnography? And I'm like, what is that? So yeah, no, that was a few months of researching in that space as well, just to know exactly how it's done, what's the best way to do it, and then whether we actually need ethics for it. Because my first thought was, if it's just my own reflections and case notes, do I really need ethics? The answer is yes. It wasn't a tedious process to go through all that, but I guess it's important that it's done. Yeah, I think it's just more about connecting with people who know about that type of research, learn from them, and where to get the resources to support you to do that type of research. I think it's very important. It's a growing type of qualitative research as well, because there's a few other colleagues in the Three Rivers are doing similar thing as well. So we sort of bounce idea off each other with that too.
Thank you so much.
Thanks.
Thanks, Shayne. Thanks, Kushila. Does anybody have any last minute burning question? Okay, because being mindful of time, we might get to the close of the session. First of all, thank you to the presenters for such interesting and inspiring, sharing their inspiring work with us. And thanks all the attendees for all this lively conversation and, for the active participation. It does make the session even more productive for everyone. So before I finish and close the session, I'd invite everyone to share your feedback on this session. Trudy has just shared the link to the feedback form. Please give us some feedback, because it does help the conference conveners to put that, take that feedback on board and improve our future conferences as well. So thank you everyone once again, and we'll close the session. We'll stop the recording now.